Okay, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, more accurately, barbarian in the room. Hey guys, MasakoX here. Most of the time, these what-if scenarios are born from things that are quite clearly rooted within the lore of the show, and things that might have actually genuinely been something that a lot of fans might have wanted to see happen, but it never materialized. Then there are those times, like in Dragon Ball Super on many occasions, that the smallest of tweaks turn into things which are quite remarkably different from what you might have anticipated. With this debate we are having, we are taking the idea of Zamasu's ability to handle the concept of mortals being more powerful potentially than himself and his fellow Kai Fruit people, and seeing whether he can be more proactive with his energies and his lot, instead of, oh, you know what happened, throwing a multiversal temper tantrum like we saw in the original story. Today, we are coming back to the most epic and significant game of civilization that you have ever seen, as we ask what might have happened if Zamasu was far more constructive with his talents and his manner and mood and did nothing wrong. If you're new to this story, then this all takes place at the time when Goasu was showcasing the wonders of living things to his trainee, trying to get an understanding about how the system worked, but it all went tango uniform because, you know, the dinos weren't the best example that Goasu could have picked. I mean, to be honest, that was a bit of a bad move there, mate. The Green Kai got absolutely nettled, and then it ultimately doomed reality as he knew it to destruction because, yeah, dinos bonking each other. The barbarians were treated to some help and cordial assistance from Zamasu himself, and instead of venting his anger, he instead applied this frustration into something more meaningful and wholesome, which is something that we always want and what my stories do tend to do. It wasn't selfless at all, but the barbarians did improve, and as a result, you might be able to tell, things got even better for them. In the last part, we saw Zamasu take a step back into the world of Barbary to find it a glowing metropolis, despite his superiors not thinking that they were worth the time, taking objection to this meddling with affairs. Despite it genuinely improving Universe 10's mortal level, it actually makes them look good. That being said, Dakraff was now an old being. He had become quite formidable in his centuries without his master there. He had formed his own group and now effectively ruled the barbarians indirectly, although he did actually directly rule them at one point. With something close to empathy and fondness, or as close as you can get with a Kai, Zamasu collected the Earth Dragon Balls and wished for Dakraff to return to his youthful days, the age when he had first met the Green Kai, a long time ago, or for Zamasu, just a couple of days, and together they were able to approach Ramushi, the destroyer of Universe 10, and a chance for the Dino Dude to become the realm's next apprentice destroyer-role superstar. You also might remember that Dakraff was able to fend off the majority of the energy that Ramushi had tried to force on him. The elephant had sincerely hoped that this thing would succumb to all of the energy afflicted upon it. I mean, that happened 99% of the time, and that Zamasu's little toy village would cease to bother him, but he was wrong. Very wrong. As the dust started to settle after Ramushi's unsuccessful attempt in erasing Dakraff, everyone went quiet. And that in of itself was a rarity these days. He had no clue what he had just seen, but what he did know was that he didn't like it. Not even Zamasu could take joy right now, or at least not entirely. He was stunned himself that his pupil effectively negated destroyer energy right there, without even proper training. The only two who were smiling at this time were Kusu and Dakraff himself. The young Kai quickly regains his composure and attempts to resume the conversation like nothing had happened. As I was saying, Lord Ramushi, this is merely a small example of what could be possibly achieved. This is merely the beginning. Think what he can do with proper training with yourself or Kusu. All he has done thus far was by his own hands, and perhaps a little of my initial guidance. He is quite remarkable. Ramushi's eyes looked panicked for a moment. He didn't actually want to admit that this was true, but the boy was right. His face didn't express this though. He looked as if he was going to strike Dakraff again for defying his will, despite the fact he was actually doing what he was supposed to do and defending himself. But Kusu eased the tension by answering for everybody. Oh, I'm sure the Grand Priest will be glad to hear the news that we have found a future replacement for Lord Ramushi. It's been too long since we had a viable candidate. I miss those days. If I actually recall, the last one met a very tragic end so suddenly. Right, Lord Ramushi?
Yes, according to said it better myself,
Oh, don't be alarmed, Lord Ramushi. Look at the bigger picture. Think about this as an insurance policy, a retirement plan. You don't want to be doing this forever, do you?
Ramushi gazes at Kusu for a moment and then back to Zamasu. He feels very, very torn. I mean, in a way, she wasn't wrong. After all, Belmont and Universe 11 have been doing this for nearly 250,000 years. Nobody was quite sure how long he'd been in the position. He was there for that long.
This creation of yours might be pretty strong for a mortal, but he is still an effect of breaking the rules nonetheless. Therefore, it would be wrong of me to consider him for the role. Consider yourselves lucky that I don't Hakai you both for this insubordination.
Zamasu bows his head, knowing that he actually had the upper hand despite what Ramushi was saying. Maybe so, but these are my mistakes, not Dakraff's. His kind is not responsible for the way that they were uplifted. They did all that on their own, without my interference, meaning that the potential was in them from the very beginning. Isn't that what matters, Lord Ramushi? Future potential? To know that one of our civilizations was capable of such wonders? Dakraff looked at his boss and nodded. Good answer. The Kai had some satisfaction in knowing that the pink elephant hated this idea with every fiber of his being. But Ramushi's fear over Kusu informing the GP about him erasing a potential god of destruction candidate who actually showed potential, who actually was pretty good for no valid reason other than his own resentment and petty spite, that was even greater a fear. Truth be told, they didn't know what the Supreme Angel's reaction would actually be, as he was very hard to read, even for his children, even more so than the Omni King himself, in fact. But he could feel that the angel of his universe was taking her father's side. It was clear to Zamasu that Kusu was really excited about the prospect of training a new candidate, and then judging from her master's posture, it was also very clear that he hadn't been training lately, being quite content with his lot, his power settling at a particular level. Kusu was, without looking at it, bored out of her mind. She could do with a distraction. Despite her small stature, she's actually the eldest out of all the angels. Classic Toriyama subversion there. Then there's the thing that Ramushi was born a mortal, and right now, Zamasu have bombarded him with mortal fears that his time might be limited.
Alright then, Kusu, you may train with this thing. I have heard that other gods of destruction are training mortals themselves, coming up with tournaments and the like. In my personal reflection, it might not hurt to have a powerful being ready to defend ourselves should we actually be dragged into any affairs.
Despite being exhausted from that previous attack, Dakraff senses victory. Thank you, Lord Ramushi.
This doesn't mean that I accept your presence here, lizard. I'll be watching you. Your training here will be the hardest experience that you've ever had. Do you hear me? Young Zamasu here might have had a soft spot for your kind, but I do not. If it were up to me, I'd erase your kind right now. And if you don't show adequate progress and devotion to Universe 10, I shall do just that, without question. And to prove I'm not bluffing, you'll be there to witness your people being destroyed, all because of your failure. I will make you watch, and then destroy you.
Dakraff remained steadfast, not flinching once. Ramushi continues, looking flustered that it wasn't getting through.
And don't get too excited because you managed to block my energy. That was but a tiny fraction of my power. There's more where that came from.
Dakraff smiled as wide as his lizard snout would allow him to. But of course. Zamasu was absolutely astonished. Dakraff didn't allow himself to be intimidated at all by Ramushi, though one wrong word could cost him dear. Maybe both of them. Maybe not death, but quite a lot of pain. Then Zamasu thought to himself that maybe he learnt this steadfastness from Dakraff, to not show fear and doubt and appearing that he was in total control. The lizard brain was working better in that regard than Zamasu's own. So, this is goodbye for now, Dakraff. Dakraff bows. Thank you, Lord Zamasu, for everything. It'll be most interesting to live out my adulthood again. Good luck. Zamasu gives the creature the most honest smile that he has ever given him, since Goasu chose him for his replacement, in fact. I'll see you again someday, my friend. And with that, Zamasu left Dakraff with Kusu and Ramushi, hoping that their plan will work, and that the barbarian will be resilient enough to survive. Later that day, the young Kai rejoined his master, Goasu, who was meditating outside his house.
Oh, Zamasu, it's good that you are here, my boy. Were you visiting your friends again?
No, master.
It's all right, you can tell me. I'm not going to judge.
Zamasu then decides to tell his master about bringing Dakraff forward as a candidate for the God of Destruction position, though he did omit some bits, like the whole part of making him young again with the Dragon Balls, nor did he reveal his visit to Zuno, or the true reason behind him setting Dakraff on a journey to become the new destroyer. He simply stated that, he was impressed by his power solely and loyalty, and felt that Lord Ramushi just was very frustrated about his job and wanted a change. Gowasu sighs loudly.
I hope you know what you're doing. He's not going to have an easy time, Zamasu. I've known Ramushi for quite a long time. He is very fond of destroying planets for small things, nor is he eager to be persuaded to change his ways. But he is very attached to the position. In a way, this is the only thing he has, Zamasu. It's quite tragic, really. He's still my friend, though, but he is rather complicated. Brawny, but unwilling to cause destruction. Proud, but very inactive.
Then, does that mean that Dakraff will be safe? The older Kai shakes his head.
Not necessarily. You two have wounded his pride. A wounded animal can become an absolute beast when provoked. You have woken him up from his marasmus, and he will take that out on your friend. Do not think otherwise. He is still our destroyer, and his anger is terrifying.
Zamasu looks away. He looks hurt, but also vindicated. He felt that this was yet another good reason to replace Ramushi with someone who was actually more competent, but he didn't want to speak out of turn to his master right now.
I suppose I owe you an apology, Zamasu.
Gowasu looks miserable for a moment.
I took you to these people. I've shown you probably the worst part of mortal life in our universe. That was on me. And you changed it into something wonderful. But I didn't fully explain to you why we shouldn't interfere.
Zamasu then recites from his memory what Gowasu had taught him, as if it was second nature. Well, I do know, because we should allow the mortals to develop at their own pace. We only intervene against supernatural threats.
Gowasu looks him right in the eyes. That's not the only reason. We avoid it because we live for thousands of years. Hundreds of thousands, in fact. For us, their lifetime is like a flickering flame of a candle. The worst thing that can happen to a Supreme Kai is to get attached to a mortal. The pain is just too much.
Zamasu says nothing, and for some time himself and Gowasu just sit there totally quiet. Meanwhile, Dakraff's training had started properly, and Ramushi wasn't joking when he said that he would be giving him a hard time. Every test that Kusu put before him, Ramushi made even harder by adding his own elements. This caused the barbarian to struggle and fail a lot, but the Destroyer God wasn't actually that proactive with his promise to erase him, even if he did show a lack of progress. After all, at the slow pace Dakraff was progressing, it was in a way stalling for time. It meant that in a way Ramushi's place was safe. It gave him confidence, overconfidence. And besides, Dakraff knew that the elephant was enjoying torturing him too much to actually blast him away. Instead, the dino bottled all his resentment up, as well as his anger. He was very good at that. This was his silent victory, he thought. Politeness. No matter what Ramushi threw at him, Dakraff would never show signs of disrespect, even though that's exactly what Ramushi wanted to see. He was pretty close, though, to it at times. But what Ramushi didn't know was that in the young body of Dakraff was a mind of a calculating old man who had conquered his demons ages ago. Ramushi thought that he would be dealing with an impertinent young being, but quite the opposite. Every time he didn't give Ramushi the satisfaction, he could mark one small victory against his tormentor. He did respect Kusu, however. She was a good mentor and a patient teacher, and with time he learned of things that were pretty impressive on a mortal level. To make his progress actually mean something, he needed to start to delve into the energy of destruction directly, and to do so, he needed to be exposed to more of it. He then convinced Kusu that she should ask Ramushi to help him with that endeavor. Dakraff knew exactly what would happen if he asked directly. The Destroyer God would never even consider it. But when his own angel would be giving him a free chance at target practice, well, let's say Ramushi would be pretty eager. The first few attacks were pretty tame for Dakraff, even to Ramushi's surprise. After all, he mostly remembered the lizard being hit during the training, but that was the one thing that made him so resilient. But things weren't going so smoothly when Ramushi decided to, without telling anyone, increase the dose, being at times dangerously close to erasing Dakraff altogether. The barbarian was however relentless, and he wanted this training every single day, each time pushing his threshold a little bit further. Then one day, when Ramushi grew bored of this whole charade and decided to end the training earlier by shooting a much more concentrated blast than had previously been anticipated, instead of gradually increasing the power, something happened. Dakraff did not deflect the energy. He took it. He finally had absorbed it. He allowed it to become part of himself, to flow through his body without fear of erasure. At this time, he went from being subjected to the pain of the energy to actually generating it himself. It scared Ramushi endlessly. He had made a mistake. When he saw Dakraff growing and expanding due to his own blast, he rushed towards him in a desperate attempt to knock the power out of the body with his fist, but a massive arm blocked it. Dakraff was towering over him, now with a red mark representing Universe 10 emblazoned on his chest, his eyes glowing with the same purple light as did the aura around him.
Thank you, Lord Ramushi,
said Dakraff, releasing the Destroyer God's hand and gently reverting back to his normal look.
Very, very good, Dakraff. See? That's how you do it. I meant to check how you could focus your energy, and you passed. See? My training does yield results.
Dakraff smiles again. Of course. Later that day, Kusu told everything that had just happened to Zamasu.
I'm so proud of Dakraff. He finally achieved the Destroyer form. Now when someday Lord Ramushi resigns, he can rest easily, knowing that he has such a strong replacement.
Zamasu smiles to himself. Oh, Kusu, he thought. That day may come much earlier than you might expect. And that's why we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? What does Zamasu mean by that? Are he and Dakraff planning something more devious than just a traditional succession? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!